As the name of the program says, Beyond the Surface. My guest on the program today is former PPP Civic Minister of Government and also scholar Dr. Henry Jeffrey. I'd like to say a very good evening and welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Stan, and thank you very much also for the invitation.
All right, so let's get into it. Ghana went to the polls on March 2, and evidently, over the years, one of the things that we would have seen happen is that we would have had a finality of results in a matter of days, and in some cases, as early as maybe a week or two, the latest. This time, it is long drawn out. What are some of the factors you believe are from a scholastic point of view would you actually put towards this situation?
I think that the problem we are in essentially now is because after the March 2 elections and the count was nearing, the incumbent regime started to realize that did not have the votes in the boxes and proceeded to what I have called in my little articles to throw the PPP under the bus. Because over the years, what has happened is that these parties both of them have been substantially manipulating the elections. And the PNC, the coalition government, PNC, whatever, then decided to throw the PPP under the bus by saying, look, you have essentially been rigging elections. And as a result, you have ended up in a recount. And during that recount process, the coalition used that recount process to try and establish where this sort of rigging was taking place, and has done so to the point where we are at this time. They are claiming something like 4,864 persons who are not supposed to be voting as voted, immigrants, they're abroad. And so here we are today. Because the situation in Guyana is not people think that it's simple voting. What people are doing, we have here an ethnic problem, a major, people say racial, I say ethnic problem, and it goes deep. The Africans in Guyana, they do not wish to be ruled by the PPP or PPP-dominated government. And the Indians don't want to be ruled by an African government. So when the time comes for elections, you have this kind of struggle. And the only way, as I've said for years, is to have some sharing of power. I believe that's why we are here where we are today.
You made mention of the two major ethnic groupings not wanting to be ruled by the other. Both of the major political parties claim to be multi-ethnic and multiracial. You have, over the years, and you've been a part of the PPP in the civic component, they've always had as the prime ministerial candidate someone of the other ethnicity in that coalition. And you also would have had recently the incumbents speaking when they were campaigning that this is a big banab where it's a coalition of various parties and ethnicities. So if that is so, in terms of what they're saying, why is there still that deep-seated belief that it is the opposite?
There is not only a deep-seated belief, there is the proof of it. I mean, if you determine the nature of the votes that the PPP, if you go really beneath it and start looking, it comes from 90% comes from its Indian constituencies. Those of Indian ethnicity, and the same goes for the PNC. The question of what they're doing and that they've been trying is essentially aspirational when they say we are multi-ethnic parties. It's an aspiration. We would like to be multi-ethnic parties, but that is clearly not the situation. You have two large ethnic groups that essentially control more than 80% of the votes in this country, and that is the problem. And when you have two large ethnic groups, power has to be shared. It's not simply a matter anymore of, for instance, having the AFC, a small group with a large African group, and say, I have a government of national unity, and the Indians are out there alienated and all of that. It's not simply a matter of getting some small group to join the PPP, and they are they are the ruling party in that little coalition, and you say, oh, we have a proper national government, and we have a government of national unity. Unless both of those parties are at the table, at the negotiation table, at the discussion table, to determine what should happen to their constituencies, Ghana will always have this kind of a problem. And there has not been an election in Ghana that people have not been set up to being rigged and all of that. But over time, you know, at one time there used to be all kinds of problems on the streets. Over the last PPP government, we had all sorts of things that people are saying some 400 people died as a result of these internecine kind of wars.
You advocate evidently for a government of national unity.
Sort of, yeah.
How can this be made manifest given what we see playing out and the tug of war for power and the winner takes all kind of system that we have in this country? How can this be made manifest in this country?
First of all, national unity or shared governance come about after great wars or after great quarrels. Even in places like Switzerland, they had a small war, and it's after that war people sit back and said, us, this is the way to go. It's not any other winner-take-all would not do. Northern Ireland, they were killing each other. One of the persons that become the deputy chief minister, he was well known as one of the chief fighters for the IRA. So these things, only a few days ago, weeks ago, we had a kind of formation of national unity government in Afghanistan. So after people quarreling and fighting, you only get these things after people quarreling and fighting and reach a stage where they're saying we can't live together anymore and make progress in the way we would like to make progress, and therefore we need another kind of a system. You asked the question of how we will get there. First of all, let's say I am totally disappointed that the coalition government, remember in its manifesto what it says that we are in 90 days or something like that, but even give it a year, we are going to start the process of a constitutional change for national unity, shared governance kind of arrangement. To this day, to the end of their term, it did not happen in any sensible way. Therefore, much of the problem, and remember, the Afro-Guyanese are the minority in this country in terms of the two large ethnicities. Even if we speak to the question of even if we speak to an issue not of race but of ethnicities, I believe that is still so. And therefore, I think they did not do well for the people by not carrying out that process of constitutional reform. Now we are at a stage where it has become quite clear that that is the only sensible democratic way forward. Remember, the PPP had the 23 years in office. And as I was saying to you, look what has happened in those years. That's not a democratic arrangement, that people are dying, people are fighting, people are quarreling. It upsets things. People saying, oh, the PPP went and used funny money, drug laws. But remember the problems that they had faced there was absolutely no economic growth between about 1998 and 2005. Nothing. Stagnant. Largely because of the quarrel we were having. And therefore the PPP did what it had to do to go and try and get resources to invest and all of that. And after that period, they had something about average 5%. But before that period, before 2005, no growth. So effectively, that is the problem. So what the coalition is now saying again, and that they are, or they're making noises to that effect, that they are for a government of national unity, or call it a shared governance regime. The PPP is saying that it is not interested in that. If the PPP wins, perhaps we'll go back to the same situation of that happened after, let's say, 1997 when Jagan died, and people are trying to rule, where we're going to have be at loggerheads, we're going to have alienation, we might even have the same amount of people dying on the street because people are going to rebel. So effectively, and I don't think that will do. One must hope that if the coalition, the PNC wins, that it carries out its promise on this occasion, recognizing how foolhardy it was for it not to do so in the first.
You seem to lay much of the responsibility at the feet of the coalition government. But what about the very same PPP? Should they be returned to office? Given that you indicated that they are not interested in a coalesced arrangement, shouldn't they have the same kind of responsibility to take this country that way?
Of course, but I am saying let's speak to reality, right? You have the PPP saying we are not interested. So I said to you that maybe then we'll go back to the period between about 1997 onwards to 2004, 2005, where we got all sort of quarrel. But of course, but you have the coalition that's saying, look, perhaps we have learned our lesson, perhaps this thing has to be done. And I hope that if they get back in, they do what they have to do. If the PPP is not interested, you will find ways around that. I'm certain of it. And therefore, try for us to get some kind of a national unity government, what I'll call a shared governance arrangement. I don't like just the term national unity, largely because it suggests that we just get together, the PPP and the PNC come together. I'm not talking about anything like that. I am talking about a constitutionalized arrangement, that constitution put in place checks and balances on power and so forth.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey, way back in 2015, I don't know if you can recall, in his writings, Hindsight, Dr. David Hines quoted you as saying that you believe that what you call the politics of dominance is very much part of the PPP's political DNA. As one who has studied the PPP as a scholar and has spent 2 decades in its ranks, your views on the matter should be taken seriously. Fast forward to 2020, how much do you see that politics of dominance still actually permeating the society? And will you also speak to whether or not the coalition practices such?
First of all, I don't know I would say that anything is in the DNA of anyone, but I would have said that they have practiced political dominance. And of course, I've just explained to you that is what they're planning again. They're saying we are not interested in sharing. We want to rule this thing by ourselves. We got 51% according to some recount or whatever, and we want to rule this country by ourselves. We are not interested in sharing, or if we are sharing, we'll share according to our terms and not to anyone else sitting at the table. And therefore, that is the politics of dominance. They are saying, when you add that to the fact that they are an ethnic party like the PNC, essentially we are saying is an Indian party wishes to rule, and to rule as it feels it should rule. That is essentially what is taking place. So I would have said that, and I've just explained to you before you asked that that's precisely what is going on again. Now, you mustn't think that that kind of behavior, that's why I said I would never have said, I don't think I would have ever said anything about being in anyone's DNA, because when people are in a position to have the majority, they always feel that, oh, well, the minority must succumb. I pointed out to some issues in terms of Northern Ireland between the Protestants. They were the majority, and they felt that the Republicans should succumb. And what was the result of all of that? Wars and all of that sort of thing. So many people died and so. But at the end of the day, you have to sit down and come to some kind of arrangement by which the two large ethnic groups, and including the others, you have a relatively sizable Indian group, sit and decide where Guyana goes, how it's ruled, how the pie is shared, and all of that.
As an educator and as someone who has studied what politics is like around the world, and you would have intimated right here in this program, do you believe that Guyana is going to have to get to the stage of, let's say, a Northern Ireland before it can get to a shared governance scenario actually happening?
I am hoping not. And don't fool yourself, since this has been going on over the last 60 years, quite a few people have died, as we've seen. If you worry with the coalition numbers, they will tell you 1,400 people died, but more sensible numbers like that coming out of an analysis, Starbuck News said 400 people died. It is just like our arrangement more insidious. People are resisting, people are dying, people are behaving in a given way, people are being suppressed in various ways. So it is not that this isn't happening. It is, and that is why it's my hope that whosoever wins, of course, I would hope that they will do something about this, try to develop a system that can allow both people to express their wish at the decision-making table. But at the same time, I paid much more attention to the coalition because they have again made a promise. Indeed, I have written a couple of things and said that the reason since 2011, I've been writing stuff saying the only reason I am backing the opposition to the PPP essentially is because it's the PPP mode of governing was going to take us nowhere. Look where we are at today. Look where we are. It's part of that that has brought us here. And of course, therefore, the coalition was a major disappointment to me when they did not do what they said they would do, and why essentially I voted for them.
Penultimately, let me ask you this. How much do you feel that geopolitics has been at play in our current election scenario? And obviously, as an academic, you do recall the fact that files came out of the CIA indicating that that was what happened in the 1960s with Premier Jagan, and then it happened after Burnham fell out of favor with the Western powers. How much do you feel that this is happening in terms of all the noise that we're hearing?
Well, I think that it is always there, but it is how it's there. Today, the major struggle in the world is between a democracy and autocracy. Well, autocracy as defined by the various sides, even by the same side. Now we see what's happening in China in relation to Hong Kong. The people in Hong Kong, they're struggling to try to keep the democratic freedoms they have, and the Chinese are putting in rules that would apparently make them more a state like China is, what would be defined in the West and by others as an autocratic state. We have seen what's happening in Russia. These are the big powers I'm talking about here. You see what happened in Russia, where you have Mr. Putin now want to change the constitution to keep himself in power maybe for 30 years, if he's allowed. And we have next door to us a situation in Venezuela. I believe that our situation in Guyana has developed in a way that makes it of interest and to those in the West and those who want to fight for democracy. For instance, I do believe that one of the most important elements in this struggle for democracy has been the institutions the West have in place to support democracy abroad. And for instance, 2017, the U.S. alone spent $3.3 billion on that amount on supporting democracy. How the situation in Guyana has developed in the last few weeks, particularly because they did not pay sufficient attention to what the local people are saying. People are saying the list is bloated, do this, do that. No, I think that they actually believe that once they call the election, people just have to give up and go. But that didn't happen. So you have had, as we have had in the past, it's substantial elections manipulations. And now after they have spent all their time, after they have called an election, you are about to undermine one of the most important institutions they have, that of election observation and to maintain a democratic world. You are saying that in front of these people, 4,800 people have voted right there when they were there. No, that is not good for the future of democracy, in the sense that other countries, when observers speak, will say, if in poor Guyana this can occur, it can happen here too, it can happen there too. Why should we believe these observers? I think it's a big issue. It's not an issue for me in terms of resources and all of that. It's not an issue, but it's an issue similar to what happened in the in the 60s with Cheddy Jagan, in the sense that it is a struggle for power. This one is not communism against capitalism, so to speak. It's authoritarian against democracy. And Guyana, how the thing has developed, maybe neither party wanted to develop this way, has put the West in a very sticky position.
Whilst you did mention, and this is my final question to you in today's program of Beyond the Surface, Dr. Jeffrey, you did mention it's not necessarily about resources. The average man in the street seems to believe that our newfound resource of oil, which many are using to describe as the black gold or the Dutch disease, is primarily the reason why you have the two main political parties at loggerheads going so long and no one wants to actually give up. Your thoughts?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think that after the last PPP regime that has brought Africans to a point where they don't want to be ruled by the PPP anymore, and after the coalition was able to gain power in 2015 and promised to change the constitution, to make that impossible so that we can have a shared governance arrangement, and did not do it, now the coalition is in a bind. It just cannot and does not want to give up power in the sense that it believes that it would place its people back into the kind of autocratic slavery kind of relationship that they believe the PPP represents. I think that is the problem on the street, and not really the oil and all of that. People like to say that because the first thing people think about, look where the money is going, that sort of statement. But the point is, I think that is the important problem driving. As for the West wanting your oil, I've said before, there's more oil in the world that you can burn if you wanted to stay within the climate change agenda. In these discourses now that perhaps you should only burn oil from the Middle East because they're producing at $10 a barrel when you're producing at 40, and they got enough oil to serve you for the longest while. And oil will become a stranded asset. As I pointed out in my little article, when Eric Williams says so long ago, oil don't spoil, he's going to find out if he was living right now that it does.
On that note, I want to say thank you very much, and certainly extend an invitation to you to return as we continue to dissect a number of the issues, particularly in your field. It's been a pleasure having you on the program this evening.
Same here, Stan, and when your invitation comes, I'll be willing to return.
Thank you very much. And this has been another edition of Beyond the Surface. In case you just joined, my guest today is none other than Dr. Henry Jeffrey. I am Stan Gavaya saying thanks for watching.